Hey, this is Daryl J for TP. I'm making a theory video on exploiting tendencies. We're gonna go over as many topics as we can. It's gonna be a multi-part series. For now, the topics we're gonna be going over are not opening enough, what to do when your opponent's opening too much, when he's not 3-betting enough, when he's 3-betting too much, when he doesn't 4-bet enough, when he 4-bets too much. All these things have there's all different ways to exploit all of these things, and they come up very often when you're playing tournament poker. These are leaks you see all the time, and you have to know how to exploit these. They're pretty basic and important stuff to know. What to do when somebody's not opening enough pre-flop. First adjustment you make is just calling less pre-flop. They're gonna have a stronger range, which means they're gonna make hands more. So you're gonna have to make hands more to beat them typically. So you're gonna want to call less pre-flop. 3-bet bluffing them less. The less they open, the higher ratio of strong hands to weak hands is going to be, so the less effective your bluff is going to be. For the same reasons, they're going to have a higher ratio of strong to weak hands. You're going to want to slow play less, and they're going to have a hand more often, and you get the money in versus them more frequently, so slow playing isn't that viable. Calling less post-flop, this isn't a huge adjustment. Typically, they're going to have more made hands on average than a typical player if they're not opening enough, so you're going to want to fold a little more. All these adjustments, they're very dynamic. They depend on how tight he's playing and how tight he should play. For example, if our guy's supposed to be opening, 20%, he's opening like 15 or 16, like that requires an adjustment, not a huge one. Not as huge as one as like if a guy opens 20% and he opens 5%. It's supposed to be opening 20% rather, and he's opening 5%. The stuff like 3-bet bluffing less, that is important as well. You need to make adjustments on that, but if a guy's not opening enough, but when you 3-bet them, they just 4-bet bluff you all the time. I mean, they never 4-bet bluff, and they just fold like really strong hands to your 3-bets. I mean, then you should probably 3-bet bluff them more. So you need to think about multiple things, multiple leaks. There's often contradicting leaks in players, and you need to figure out how to attack those, and I'll help you out with this video. You just want to like rate the pros and cons, see what's most important, and stuff like that. Same thing goes for slow playing. If when you just call preflop to their open, they just barrel off a ton, but won't really give you a ton of action when you 3-bet them, then you're gonna probably, but won't give you a ton of action when you 3-bet them, then you should probably not slow play less. You should, be inclined to slow play more and have them barrel off for you. And to even more extent post-flop, like a guy could not open a lot but make up for it by c-betting way more often than other people. So these are things to keep in mind, not just look at one leak and stuff like that, just look at the whole picture. But if you only have like one read, if all you know about this guy is he doesn't open enough, then, make the adjustments accordingly. It's hard to tell you exactly how much to adjust, even with hand illustrations, but yeah, I could just talk about the adjustments, and it's up to you guys to figure out how to exactly adjust in such a dynamic game, and so much about his game flow and stuff like that, and there's so many different variables that go into a hand. So, okay, let's move on to the next leak. The next leak is if a guy's opening too much. These guys, you just want to 3-bet bluff them a lot more. You want to call them more pre-flop. when they're opening so much, they're just going to have a ton of weak hands in their range. It's going to make it hard for them to play back, so your 3-bet bluffs is going to be a lot more profitable. When you get to post-flop, they're going to show up with weaker hands more often, so you could get in there with weaker hands. You're going to have more equity versus their opening range, so you could definitely call later then. Slow playing more, they're going to have weaker hands in their range, so they're going to have a relatively higher ratio of weak hands to made hands, so when you 3-bet them, they're just going to fold more often, typically. And another thing is to call more post-flop. Same tangent I've been going on, they're just getting to the flop with weaker hands, so therefore when they bet, they're going to have slightly weaker hands. Again, this isn't a huge adjustment. Normally you would 3-bet bluff more, but there is situations where if a guy's opening too much, but at the same time he just 4-bet shoves with like any two, just like, and there are players like this. There's a few players like this. I think Big Dog is like one of those players who I just like never 3-bet bluff. I'm just so scared to 3-bet bluff him because he's just gonna like 4-bet ship it on me like every single time. Like I just stay out of his way, and I don't really do much. We'll get into more about dealing with aggressive 4-betters, but Big Dog is definitely like one of those players that I just don't want to 3-bet, even though he just like opens everything too at the same time. So it's not necessarily true that you have to 3-bet bluff these guys more. Calling more pre-flop, I don't know, I guess that can always be true. It kind of just depends like how well you pay post-flop and stuff. You can pretty much always call more pre-flop, because even if they're barreling more often than not, they're going to show up weaker hands more often, so you can call more and stuff like that, so you have more equity versus their range, so you pretty much always call a little bit more pre-flop, unless you feel like you're just going to get owned post-flop anyway, so you just like stick with your normal range. Slow playing more, pretty sure that, this isn't always true. If your 3-bets are just going to get no credit and the guy just like 4-bet bluffs, like if you're playing like Big Dog, like I pretty much just like never slow play anything versus him, just because I feel like he always 4-bets. So just because a guy's opening too much doesn't mean you should always slow play more, but in general you should slow play more with all else equal. But the reason I wouldn't do it versus Big Dog is because he just 4-bets a ton, and he doesn't fold to 3-bets either. He likes to call and defend and do annoying stuff post-flop, and just makes life really hard. Calling more post-flop, not necessarily true. There are players who just open a bunch and then they don't really c-bet a lot or barrel a lot. They kind of just like to open and try and take it down. There isn't a ton of players like that, so for the most part, you can call more post-flop. There are rare circumstances where you could actually fold more post-flop. I believe I have a hand example to illustrate what I'm talking about. Woozle, the Woozle opens here. He's a guy who opens too much. Not necessarily too much, but he opens a lot. Not saying that he makes a lot of unprofitable opens, but he opens a lot more than the vast majority of rigs and other people. When he opens here, my 3-bet looks pretty strong because it's pre-antes and I'm out of position. There isn't a ton of 3-betting going on at this level. So I decided to flat. He c-bets and I check raise. It's the obvious line here. I could check call as well, but I opted for a check raise. It's hard to say which is better without knowing more about him. Some factors you would think about here is like how often he's going to 4-bet ship with air. 3-bet ship with air when you check raise. I don't think it's that often, since I have a lot of hands like 7s, 8s, 9s in my range, that even 10s, so I think I rep more on a check raise. Like there's certain times when you check raise this board and you rep nothing, but this isn't one of those situations. I have a somewhat tight range pre-flop, and I have like a lot of those pairs in my range, and I think he knows I could even do this like 6s or something, or even like an ace-5 suited. So I don't know if he's gonna, I don't think he should 4-bet ship it super light. It's probably a spot where I think he'd barrel quite a bit. Yeah, that's another factor you consider is like how often he's going to barrel. Kind of like going off tangent. It's supposed to be a theory vid about exploiting leaks, but going into like a hand, but whatever. I think when we flat, our range looks like ace high a ton. I think you would expect us to just check raise, get it in if we had a pair over fives or a pair of fives. So I think flatting could be best since he should be barreling a lot when we flat. I end up just check raising, which I think isn't the best play, but it's nice to balance our range here and stuff like that because I'm going to be wanting to bluff check raise this board. So whatever, I think it's a mistake, but it's fine. He ships and we call. Doing stuff like this, like flatting kings, like allows you to check raise like really dry boards that normally you're like really scared to check raise because like you know your opponent will put you on nothing, but when they see you flat like big pairs like this, they know you have like big pairs in your range. It makes it a lot tougher to play against, and they can't just like automatically just ship air when you check raise here. Okay, let's move on to what to do when your opponent's not 3-betting enough. First thing you want to do is open more. When they're not 3-betting more, your opens are going to be more profitable. Even if they make up for it by calling more, your opens are still going to be more profitable since you get to post flop more and you have initiative and you can outplay them, stuff like that. The obvious adjustment of folding to more of his 3-bets. If he's not 3-betting enough and he's not bluffing as often as he should, then you should fold more than you typically would. You're going to want to 4-bet bluff these guys less. They're going to have less bluffs in their range than normal, than your average player, or whatever. You can't 4-bet get in versus them as weak as you normally would. You can't 4-bet shove as weak as you normally would since they have less bluffs in their range, so you have less fold equity. You can't 4-bet call as weak as you normally would, and with all else equal, they have less bluff. They have less hands to 5-bet bluff with since they're not 3-bet bluffing as often as normal. So you can't 4-bet get in as weak as you like to. Not as you like to as you normally would. And slow play less. When they 3-bet, they're going to have a higher ratio of good hands to bad hands, so slow playing less makes more sense in general. When you do call their 3-bets, you also need to just fold more post-lap when they're doing that in general. And as you can see, it's basically like the same. The way to exploit opening too little and opening too much is basically like they're basically like the inverse of each other, things you need to do. Once again, all these are not necessarily what you need to do versus that opponent. For example, there are opponents who don't 3-bet at all, but they defend a ton and then they like never fold post-flop. So you wouldn't necessarily open more versus those guys. There are guys who aren't 3-bet bluffing enough, but their value range is like really tight, like aces or kings, so even though they aren't bluffing as many combos of bluffs as other people would in that spot, they also have far fewer, they're also players who have far fewer combos of value hands, so they'll actually have like a higher ratio of bluff to value hands than a typical player. 4-bet bluffing less is not necessarily true either. Online, this is not as prevalent as live, but there are people who although they don't 3-bet bluff as much, they fold to 4-bets a lot more frequently. They'll 3-bet good hands and then fold them to 4-bets, so you'll actually have more fold equity versus them. The trend online, though, is if you're 3-betting, they're either doing it for value or as a bluff, so people don't necessarily take hands like the ace queen and 3-bet and fold them. So it's usually the case that you have to 4-bet bluff less versus them. But live, like it's very common for someone to just take a hand like jacks, 3-bet, and see where they're at, and then fold to 4-bet. 4-bet for value with a stronger range. That's pretty much true. There isn't many players who don't 3-bet enough, but 5-bet a ton. I'm sure there are some, but I think it's very, very rare. And if you just go under the assumption that people who don't 3-bet enough don't 5-bet enough either, you're gonna do fine. There's maybe like some people who don't 3-bet bluff a lot, but like to 3-bet get it in super thin value. So in that case, you can get it 4-bet. You can 4-bet call a weaker range since they're just taking like really, really weak value hands and like fives or something, or king queen, and 3-betting them so they could 5-bet ship them, or 3-betting them so you could 3-bet call because they think you're 4-bet bluffing a lot. So it's not necessarily true that you need to 3-bet with a stronger range. Slow playing less isn't necessarily true either. Even if somebody's not 3-betting enough, they might just fold a ton to 4-bets if they think your 4-bet's really strong, and they might be the type to just barrel a lot when you just call, so you might want to slow play more. So it's important to think about everything when making a decision. Also, base your adjustments by how, extreme their leak is. If a guy's just like, you think he's just like slightly not 3-betting enough, then your adjustments should be slight. If you think it's way too much, then, your adjustment should reflect that. Just try and base your adjustments based on how exploitable they are. Through a hand with a guy not 3-betting enough. I'm just trying to find it here. Okay, Funky Monkey opens under gun, good rag, makes good decisions, stuff like that. Pretty easy flat, can't really 3-bet versus this guy, even though I have a loose aggressive image versus him. Once we 3-bet pre-ante, his under gun open, he's gonna fold all worse hands. Dude of Life 3-bets the button, he's a reg, but he's also on the really tight side, and he's pretty much like never 3-bet bluffing here. And I don't think he's 3-betting. He's not the type of player to like 3-bet ace king here, and he's definitely not going to 3-bet 10. So actually, just end up folding jacks and yeah, just like exploiting him like that. So here's an example of guys who just aren't 3-betting enough. Folds to me on the button. I have a really crappy hand, but I know these guys aren't going to reshove or 3-bet enough. Well, I guess this would just be a reshove. They can't really 3-bet. So I think I just raise any two and take down the pot. And since I'm putting in a min raise, I'm risking 2,000 to win 2175. So I have to like get folds like less than half the time to make money. And yeah, they end up folding. So yeah, that's just like a basic adjustment of like opening more versus guys like that, folding more to their 3-bets. Let's go on to 3-betting too much. First thing you need to do is open less. I see people not make this adjustment and kind of like get owned by like people who are 3-betting a lot. It's really tough to play against like a good aggressive 3-betters when you're starting with a really wide opening range. Once you tighten up your opening range, it makes things a lot easier for you. Since you'll have a higher ratio of good hands to bad hands to start with. Fold less to their 3-bets should be pretty obvious. You want to call more, 4-bet bluff them more. You also want to 4-bet for value with a weaker range, either 4-bet shoving or 4-bet calling with a weaker range, since you're going to have more fold equity when you're 4-bet shoving, and they have more hands to 5-bet bluff you with if you're 4-bet calling, so you could definitely 4-bet get in lighter versus those guys, and you want to slow play more versus guys like this as well. They're just going to have a higher ratio of weak hands to bad hands, so you want to slow play more in general. So when you 4-bet, they're going to 4 more often than you would like, generally. Once again, these aren't necessarily true. If a guy is 3-betting too much and you're very confident that they're 3-betting too much, but let's say you have a 4-bet shove stack where you could just you could just 4-bet ship on them super light, then you could just open with the intention of 4-bet shoving on them, and you might not show a profit on your open, but you'll make up for that when you 4-bet them and show a profit. This is a really high variance, aggressive play. You want to be sure that you know what you're doing. When you're doing this, you want to be confident in your read that he's 3-betting too much and at the same time not calling your 4-bet a ton. So to make a play like this, since you're kind of committing to putting in your entire stack a high percentage of the time with a very weak hand, folding less to his 3-bets, pretty much always true. I can't really see a situation where you should not fold less. Trying to think of one. For example, if like a guy is just he's 3-betting too much, but his range is like he takes like all those middling hands like weaker pairs and weaker high cards and stuff like that, and 3-bets them, and then doesn't fold the 4-bets, either calls them super light or 5-bets with them and stuff like that, then you might have to fold more to his 3-bets. Like, let's say his range is just like queen jack, king queen, king jack type stuff, and like 5s and 6s, and he's like calling shoves with them and like 5-betting with some of them and stuff like that, then you wouldn't necessarily fold less those 3-bets. Big Dog is like one of those players as well, just like they 3-bet a ton, but he's also 3-betting like king jack, king queen, like type hands, and 5-bet shipping a ton, so you can't really 4-bet bluff them a ton, and just making life difficult post-flop when you call as well. So when you do call, they're like barreling and not folding and just like doing tough stuff like that. 4-bet bluffing more, I basically touched on this. There are guys who just 3-bet a ton and 5-bet a ton as well, so you like just can't like do anything. Big Dog is I don't know if he's like a super crazy 5-better. I kind of think he is. I could be wrong though. If he watches this video, he could correct me. Sublime is one of those guys where you're just like scared to 4-bet him because he would just like 5-bet ship like anything and he doesn't care. 4-bet for value with a weaker range. There are a lot of players who just like, I'm not sure about online, but live there are a lot of players who just like 3-bet too much, but when you 4-bet they just give up and they'll fold a lot, and their 3-bet range would be really polarized. Like they'll only do with like their really really big hands, but do it a lot as a bluff. So when you 4-bet call, like you're just running into like the nuts and stuff like that. Slow playing more, not necessarily true either. There are a ton of players who just like, we're just gonna 5-bet ship for sure 4-bets a ton, so you just 4-bet and they shove and you show them the nuts and you win. Let's show some examples of people 3-betting too much. Endless J opens, he's a really loose opener. Hold please, a really aggressive 3-better. I think I'm adjusting too much by 3-betting 3 deuce here, but I think it illustrates my point pretty well of just like 4-betting a really wide range here. So we 4-bet here and get them both to fold and exploit Hold Please's tendencies to just 3-bet way too much in position. Okay, let's move on to what to do if your opponent doesn't 4-bet enough. Just a few adjustments, not as many as the others. You want to 3-bet them more as a bluff. Pretty straightforward. A guy isn't going to 4-bet bluff you, you're going to want to 3-bet them more as a bluff. You want to 3-bet more with a stronger range for value. Since they aren't going to be 4-bet bluffing as much, then you want to do it with a stronger range for value. More to his 4-bets, pretty straightforward. They aren't going to be bluffing much, so you're not going to want to like 5-bet chip on them too light. These, for the most part, hold true. A situation where if a guy just isn't opening at all, and if a guy doesn't 4-bet a lot but isn't opening at all, you probably shouldn't be 3-betting them as a bluff, unless they're just like when they call post-flop. If they call a lot post-flop and then give up, then that would be a situation where you should still 3-bet more as a bluff. But if they're just like folding or 4-betting and they always have good hands when they open, then you really shouldn't be 3-betting them. 3-bet with a stronger range for value. It's pretty much true unless the guy is flatting a lot of 3-bets, and we'll get into how to play versus someone who's flatting a lot of 3-bets in my next video. You could 3-bet those hands with the intentions that 3-bet weaker hands with intentions that they're calling, but at the same time fold to their 4-bets. Folding more to his 4-bets is pretty much always true unless you feel like they'll 4-bet fold good hands, which is really rare online, which might happen live though. People like 4-bet queens to see where they're at, or kings, and then fold to a shove. But it's pretty much always true online that you need to fold more to their 4-bets. Let's get into some examples. Here's the example. Guy opens under the gun. So we 3-bet queens. This tight player under the gun was a tight opening range and a tight 4-bet range. He's really tight. He 3-bets to 3,200. If he just jammed, I would call, but when he makes it 3,200, I think with him already being a tight player, him making a play like this is just indicative of the nuts. I think a hand like jacks or tens would just shove or call. I think that's what he would do, and the same with ace king. I don't think he would do this with those type of hands, since he's out of position, and it's tough to play hands like that out of position. I think he would just chip, and I don't think he's ever bluffing since he's very tight, so I think we're able to just exploit him by folding a hand like this. Okay, let's move on to the last one. 4-bets too much. You want to 3-bet them less as a bluff, since they're going to be 4-bet bluffing you a lot. You want to 3-bet with a weaker range for value, since they're going to be 4-bet bluffing more, so you could just 5-bet chip on them more and fold less to his 4-bets. Should be pretty obvious, kind of ties into the last thing I mentioned about 3-betting with a weaker range. 3-betting with a weaker range and following up with folding less to his 4-bets. You 3-bet with that weaker range. It's again like these aren't necessarily true. Actually, I want to get into 3-betting with a weaker range. What I mean is, like, there are examples where you could take like a weak pair type hand or a weak hand like king queen or something, and just 3-bet them with the intention to 5-bet. You could even do it with like really weak hands that you would classify as a bluff, but those are like really high variance plays where you have to be confident in your read that you know they're going to be 4-bet bluffing way too much, because you're basically like putting in a 3-bet that you think is negative EV, but you think you're going to make it back by putting in a 5-bet. So you don't just want to like carelessly like throw around 3-bets with the intention of 5-betting unless you're pretty sure that play is good, because you're like committing your whole stack on a 5-bet, which is pretty risky. But like I was saying, it's not necessarily true that you want to 3-bet less as a bluff. If the guy is just 4-betting so much and you're so confident that he is, you could just 3-bet a lot as a bluff, but when he 4-bets, just 5-bet chip on him. Even though you're making less, you're not making money on your 3-bet, you're making money on your 5-bet, so it works out. 3-bet with a weaker range for value is pretty much always true. A situation where it might not be true is if, no, I mean, it's pretty much always true that you could 3-bet with a weaker range for value if they're 4-betting too much. fold less to his 4-bets. Pretty much always true as well. There might be like some rare situations where a guy's 4-bet range would have like a ton of like just really like weak value hands, so you can't like 5-bet ship on them light with like a really weak hand. They'll just like 4-bet like a hand like fours or something and call your 5-bet, so shoving your 4-3 suited is gonna be too good versus like those guys and stuff like that. Let's get into an example of just like a guy 4-betting too much. I actually have a few of them. This is just like a basic example of just like 5-betting a guy. Rue 400, very aggressive, good player. I 3-bet him, he 4-bets me. I just decide the 5-bet chip on him. I just know he's gonna be really out of line here. I'm shoving a lot of big blinds and stuff, but at the time I just felt like game flow was right and dynamic, and I just felt like he'd be really out of line and that I could shove, and I shoved and took down the pot. This is what I'm talking about taking weak hands to 3-bet and turning them to 5-bet. I was pretty confident that Hit the Panda would 4-bet me really light, that I could shove a hand like fours on him. My 3-bet doesn't really have a ton of immediate value since it sucks post-flop, and I think he's 4-betting a lot and calling a lot. So I'm basically just 3-betting to 5-bet. So he 4-bets, and I just 5-bet ship it on him, and if he does call, I have decent equity. His range is gonna be like 10s plus, maybe like 10s plus ace queen plus. I think fours is decent equity versus that. Like, don't hold me to this, but I think it's like I think it's like 38% equity or something like that. Just like it's the top of my head. I could be wrong, but it's pretty good equity on a 4-bet. So yeah, I shove and he folds, and it's a pretty good way to exploit someone who's 4-betting too much. Good thing about this is like when they know you're 3-betting hands like fours and then 5-bet shipping them, they know your value range is super wide, so it makes it really tough to 4-bet you when you're doing stuff like this. But you also have to be confident in your read and confident like your read on your opponent and the game flow and stuff like that, because it's like pretty high variance stuff. Not necessarily with the hands like fours, and since he calls, you have pretty decent equity if I did the math right. But if you're doing it with like a hand like king jack off or 6-5 suited or something, becomes more speculative. I think that's the last hand that I have. Hope you guys like the video. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff. I think we're going to get into if a guy calls 3-bets too much or doesn't call 3-bets enough, if he doesn't call enough, call enough opens, calls opens too much, a whole bunch of post-flop things, etc., etc. Yep, that's the video.